Superheroes are the coolest. Who doesn't dream of having superpowers just like their favorite heroes?
Please, take me to the hospital!
The ability to fly, super strength, X-ray vision would be some of our favorites. But what if you couldn't control your powers? What if you lost complete control and hurt others? Would you still want them? Before you answer these questions, don't forget to zap that subscribe button and join the CBR notification squad to keep up to date on all things superheroes.
And Hulk. Smash.
Channeling your demons. You probably already know that Ghost Rider's powers come from his black magic bond to a demon. That demon's name is Zarathos, and he has been a fiery thorn in Johnny Blaze's side for decades. The arrangement between them allowed the demon to surface in Blaze's body as the Ghost Rider, an instrument by which Lucifer returns escaped damned souls to hell. We wouldn't recommend this power or trying to conjure up demons, especially remembering the early days in Blaze's bonding. Blaze had very little influence on the Rider, succumbing to Zarathos' control anytime evil presented itself. If you want to talk about losing control, talk to Blaze and see how he feels. Over time, however, he gradually gained more control over his alter ego, using its power to not merely vanquish baddies, but to protect the innocent. This protection of the innocent became Ghost Rider's primary mandate, as Blaze made its mystical powers his own. But it wasn't always smooth sailing. Zarathos has resurfaced several times over the years, enacting various schemes to regain control of Johnny Blaze's physical body. At times he was successful, causing Blaze to once again lose himself to the Rider, but the human usually manages to beat back the demon in the end.
Plus I have some personal issues I'd kind of like to get fixed.
Solar energy superflare. A confluence of several circumstances ultimately led to the demise of the new 52 version of Superman. One of those was the emergence of a new power he called the superflare ability. With this power, Supes released a massive full power blast of every bit of solar energy stored up in his cells. It was an attack of devastating destruction, but it had the side effect of leaving Clark powerless for 24 hours afterward. His body needed time to reabsorb sunlight before he could fly or super punch anybody. After repeated use of this ability, Kal-El found himself losing part of his powers, including flight, heat vision, speed, and so on. It didn't help matters that Lois Lane revealed his secret identity to the world. A few apocalyptic fights and one kryptonite infection later, he was forced to use his superflare power one last time. It pretty much finished him off. Fortunately, the pre-New 52 Superman had found his way into the Rebirth universe and was able to take his place, but New Soup's loss was deeply felt by all of his friends, especially his lady love, Wonder Woman. We think the Man of Steel was recently restored in full, hopefully with full command of his signature abilities, but given DC's love for retcon, who knows.
One day the world's gonna realize its mistake.
Radioactive Man's powers. Dr. Chen Liu, PhD, internationally exposed himself to small amounts of radiation over time until he built up a superhuman tolerance. Not only was he able to survive massive exposure to the stuff, his skin started glowing green and he roided out. Big time. He somehow converted radiation to physical strength. He gained control over radiation and was able to wield it as a weapon as well. Sounds pretty cool, right? Yep. Except for one small caveat, he's never entirely in control. Radioactive Man can't turn off his powers, meaning he never stops giving off radiation, which makes him a danger to those around him. He's forced to wear a special bodysuit if he wants to avoid harming others, but it only works for a short while. When Norman Osborn was in control of things during the Dark Reign storyline, he had Dr. Liu don something more akin to a hazard suit, which had similar effects. His emotions have been shown to affect his absorption and release of radiation. Sadly, Radioactive Man can't seem to decide which side of the law he wants to be on. He's battled the Avengers countless times, voluntarily worked with the Thunderbolts, served as a hero of the people to his native China, and flip-flopped back to villainy again and again.
Hey, what if you have to pee while you're on fire?
Oh, it's awesome.
Reality-altering magic. If you dreamed of having powers like Scarlet Witch, you might want to reconsider. Wanda Maximoff's powers have always been a challenge for her to control, but back in 2004, they reached critical mass. Years ago, she gave birth to twin boys, but it turned out they weren't real. They were just manifestations of her reality-altering chaos magic. She was unable to accept this, and she soon became a danger to herself and others, so her memories of the boys were wiped from her mind. Years later, Wanda began to remember them, and when she realized what had been done to her, she went mad with grief. A nervous breakdown gave way to a full-on war waged against the Avengers that resulted in several deaths and the team's complete upheaval. All of the destruction and death came from her tampering with the fabric of reality. Later on, she caused M-Day, the depowering of the mutant race that nearly caused their extinction. Moral of the story, you don't mess with mommy. It was all retconned later to her being possessed by some kind of astral entity or something, because comics. But as it was written at the time, Scarlet Witch lost control of her mind, and her powers couldn't help but follow.
You can't overpower me.
I know I can't. But she can.
Living steel body. Nathan Haywood, who had a promising football career until a severe injury required him to have a leg amputated, one encounter with a metallic baddie later, and his system was infected with said villain's metallic blood. For never really explained reasons, Nathan's body absorbed the metal, and in addition to growing him a new leg, it made him superhuman and transformed him into Citizen Steel. Regrowing a limb and having a body made of steel sounds pretty cool, doesn't it? The problem was, this new living steel body came with some drawbacks that were far beyond Nathan's ability to control. The good, he gained nigh unlimited super strength and invincibility. The bad, he lost the ability to feel physical touch, which prevents him from gauging temperature or pain. Plus, he can't control how strong he is, like, at all. For example, his footsteps tend to be so heavy that the floor or ground fractures under him. Remember the amazing scene from Amazing Spider-Man where Peter Parker accidentally destroys his bathroom because of his newfound abilities? Picture that, but on a much more dangerous scale. To manage these limitations, Citizen Steel wears a special suit that mitigates the heft of his movements and keeps his strength from doing too much damage.
I'll protect it. It's my job.
All-powerful force of life and death. It's one of Marvel's best-known stories, and an all-time classic comic book epic that helped define an era. Jean Grey gained a massive boost in power thanks to a cosmic entity known as the Phoenix. Unbeknownst to her, or the X-Men at the time, the Phoenix was all-powerful force of life and death. This force was definitely far too much power for one person to control. Don't worry, it went okay for a while, until of course it didn't. Well, you know what they say about corruption and power. The old adage once again rang true when the Phoenix overpowered Jean and transformed her into the Dark Phoenix, a force of ultimate destruction. Jean's personality faded further and further into the background while the Phoenix took over completely. In the midst of her madness, the Phoenix consumed an entire star, causing the destruction of an inhabited world and the deaths of billions who lived there. Needless to say, that was the point of no return for the character, and during a brief moment of clarity, Jean's real personality reasserted herself and she committed suicide to help from killing anyone else. Never mind that all this was retconned 6 years later.
I'm not afraid of him.
You should be.
Booming voice. The king of the Inhumans is a tricky one, because Black Bolt does have some measure of control over his powers. The problem is, his special ability gives him a handicap that he can't do anything about. Black Bolt's power is all in his voice. It's said that the energy emanating from his voice is so powerful that he can level a city block with a whisper. Pretty cool superpower, right? But the problem it presents is obvious. He's effectively mute unless he wants to destroy everything and everyone around him. He can modulate his voice from a whisper to a scream, thereby employing a measure of control over how much power he emits, but any kind of conversation, be it casual or negotiating with an enemy, is simply impossible for Black Bolt. That makes his power more of a hindrance than an asset. He's traditionally chosen to allow his wife Medusa to speak for him. Fortunately, she knows him so well that she's able to accurately predict his commands. But still, even with a bit of control over his vocal cords, the guy cannot emit a sound without causing Omega-level destruction. You have to imagine that he wishes that he had a slightly higher level of command than that.
Touched you 5 seconds, laid 3 eggs.
Didn't even buy me a drink.
The fire within. Have you ever wanted to have amazing fire powers? Perhaps the ability to set things ablaze? Well, we think after you recall the story of Liz Sherman, you might rethink this power. Poor Liz Sherman. You think you've got issues? When her powers first manifested, the young Miss Sherman conjured a fire so big that it leveled a city block and inadvertently killed 32 people. Among the 32 were her own parents. Kinda takes survivor's guilt to a whole new level of bad, doesn't it? She later learns to control her powers while working at the BPRD, but Liz's ability to generate fire is inexorably linked to her emotional state. But her power has been known to slip out of her control during intense situations. At least she has friends like Hellboy and Abe Sapien on hand to help her through it. Could you imagine a better support system? Always a damaged soul, Liz would learn years later that she couldn't live without her fire, quite literally. She once traded away her fire in an attempt to be rid of it for good, but without it, she began to slowly die. Don't worry, she got her spark back.
You know, with the benefit of hindsight.
Walking atomic bomb. In Mark Waid and Alex Ross's Kingdom Come, readers were presented with an alternative look at the future of DC Comics universe. It was a violent reflection on current times, where new heroes rose to popularity among a weary public for using decisive violence to kill villains rather than stop or imprison them. One of these was Captain Atom, an old-school hero who stayed on with the murderous newer heroes like Magog to try to keep them in check. Atom's powers were a double-edged sword. He was nearly unmatched in any fight, a being of pure quantum energy encased in an alien metal who could fire atomic blasts and fly at supersonic speed. It was only this metal shell that kept the good captain's explosive powers at bay, as he was essentially a walking atomic bomb just waiting to explode. A battle with the villain named Parasite proved this to be true when the baddie used strength he'd absorbed from Atom and Magog to rip open a tear in Captain Atom's shell. The release of all Atom's energy at once was enough to cause a nuclear explosion and subsequent fallout across the state of Kansas, killing millions and devastating America's heartland. Whoops?
In the sky, Chief.
It's a bird.
It's a plane.
No, look, it's... You wanted to see me?
Hulking out. This list would not be complete without this big green guy. If there were ever a poster child for not being able to control one's power, it's undoubtedly Bruce Banner. You know the story? Bombarded with gamma radiation, poor Bruce was doomed to transform into a huge monster anytime he couldn't keep his anger in check. And boy, does he have a temper. Just how much control Bruce loses as the Hulk is a spectrum that fluctuates according to whatever story is currently being told and who's telling it. Sometimes he's a mindless beast, willing to rampage and tear apart anything and anyone regardless of their villain or hero status. Other times, Hulk maintains some semblance of Bruce's intellect and morals, choosing to fight alongside the Avengers and other heroes. There have even been times when Hulk was basically Bruce Banner's genius mind stuck in Hulk's powerful barbaric body. But on the whole, the idea is that the angrier Hulk gets, the stronger Hulk becomes. Sounds pretty cool being able to channel anger, but at what cost? The anger-strength ratio seems to bring with it an equal descent into mindless beast mode. There's a reason you wouldn't like him when he's angry.
We don't take hints.
What powers did you think were the most dangerous? Are there any powers you think we missed on this list? Let us know in the comments below. If you haven't already, subscribe to CBR and like and share our video. Thanks for watching.